Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today I thought I'd try something new, and that is, well, actually talk about cards. So I'm going to probably make a multiple part series on this, but I wanted to talk about the Destined ones that appeared in the new Vanguard anime, Vanguard Divine Season 2. And what better way to start off with the first one that they introduced, Destined 1 of Infinity, Lividras. I hope you enjoyed this content and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. First, let's start off with talking about the actual card itself, Destined 1 of Infinity, Lividras. Its ability is Act. Once per turn, you can counterblast 1 and choose a rearguard circle on both you and your opponent's field and place an Infinity Eyes marker on it. The Infinity Eyes marker itself doesn't do any abilities, but it does tie into the rest of the deck. And then Auto. When a rearguard on a circle with an Infinity Eyes marker on it attacks or boosts, you may have it gain either 10,000 power or lose 10,000 power. If it's your opponent's rearguard circle and you made it lose 10,000 power, at the end of that battle, you remove that marker and draw one card. Its Divine skill, Soul Blast 1 and place another Infinity Eyes marker on both fields, and Lividras gains 10,000 power and 1 critical. And that can only be done if your opponent's Vanguard is also on grade 3, I believe. Okay, right off the bat, looking at this card itself, I think the skill is already pretty solid in helping you put pressure on your opponent during your turn while saving your cards in your hand and drawing you additional cards during the opponent's turn, which is always pretty nice, honestly. The Divine skill itself is pretty simple but already pretty deadly. Using it early on in the game, you can help weaken your opponent's columns early on while pressuring your opponent with the critical on your Vanguard, potentially force them to either guard early or take the hit and being in an awkward position later on in the game where they can't afford to take any more hits. If you use it later on in the game, it could help you, finish off the game with the extra critical if you know your opponent has used up a lot of perfect guards or didn't really drive check any triggers or any shields during their last turn. So overall, for the card design, I do think it's pretty good, maybe a solid 4 out of 5. Some notable rulings though for Lividras. For one, you can stack multiple Infinity Eyes markers on a single rearguard circle. However, the auto ability will only trigger once per attack or boost, so you cannot make your opponent lose 20,000 power if there are 2 markers on the field, nor can you make your rearguard gain 20,000 power if there are 2 markers on your circle. Also, if your rearguard is dominated by Shiranui or something, you can make the dominant rearguard lose 10,000 power if it's on your board. However, you must also remove the marker as well as draw a card from that ability. Also, if you are playing against a mirror match, please note that if your opponent attacks, you cannot make the rearguard lose 10,000 power if it's only their marker on the board. The ability specifies it has to be your marker. So if your opponent plays their home marker on their circle, unfortunately you can't make them lose 10,000 power. For Lividras' support cards, he does come with a wide range of support cards right off the bat, making it a pretty solid deck. So the first one is a triple rare on fall Anatogaster. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that. On play, if there is an Infinity Eyes marker on the same column as this card, Energy Blast 3 and to look up the top 2 cards of your deck and add 1 card to hand and put the other on top of your deck, and it gains 5,000 power. And then continuous, if you have 3 Infinity Eyes marker and you have no other copies on this card, no other copies of this card on your rearguard circle, it gains 5,000 power and can attack from the back row. The second card, Fornage Foxcell, is a 13k booster if you have a Lividras as your Vanguard. And when it boosts Lividras, it gains an additional 2,000 power and you can counterblast 1 to choose a rearguard in your back row, and that rearguard can attack from the back row. And it also gains 10,000 power, which allows you to attack about 5 times per turn, which is also really good. The next one is Hunter of Claws, Huli. On play, it's pretty simple. On play, if you have an Infinity Eyes marker on the same column as this unit, you can counterblast 1 to call it a grade 3 or below card from your drop to the rearguard circle. So unfortunately you can't call the grade 4 Magnolia if you decide to tech it in your deck for some reason. And if you have 3 or more markers, it gains 10,000 power. Next up we have Knight of Tranquility, Clarence. After the battle that this unit attacks or boosts, if there is an Infinity Eyes marker in the same column as its rearguard, you may put this card into your soul to countercharge 1, if you have not countercharged this turn already. So yeah, this card will probably be your main countercharger. This deck does eat up quite a bit of counterblasts each turn, considering you will want to use the special booster for Levy Dress and also Levy Dress's ability to add markers. So it is probably a 2 counterblast per turn deck. And lastly, we do have Searching for Infinity Knowledge. This card is an order card. You can only play it if you have a Levy Dress Vanguard, and you have to pay 2 energy to play this card. Choose and call a card with a grade equal to or lower than your Vanguard, and call it to the rearguard circle, and it gains 5000 power for every Infinity Eyes marker in the same column as this unit, which is pretty nifty if you try to go for game with a back row attacker. Okay guys, up next is cards I think you should pick up right now if you want to play Levy Dress. You know, the Vanguard market is pretty crazy sometimes, going up and down, and hopefully this information is not too late for you. So first up, I want to bring up the card Mythiarch Habitat. It's a normal order card that lets you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and to call up a unit card. It also has the nice additional ability that if you were to supposed to search a unit card and this card is among them, you can search for it instead and add to your hand instead. The next card I would recommend is Asporinia and Saphira. I'm pretty sure it's mispronounced Asporinia. It's a pretty good card. On play, you look at the top card of your deck, and you can either leave it there or mill it, which is pretty good. If you're trying to go for triggers, or if you see a card that you'd rather just have in the drop zone rather than on top of your deck, then it's pretty good for that. Also for Counterblast 1, you can either call a grade 2 or above card back to your field, or add a normal order cards from your drop to your hand, which lets you get your cards back. Another thing I do recommend picking up is a Blitz Order package with Morpho, as well as some good Blitz orders such as Ever Send Shadow Dreamblade or Believe in the Blooming Buds of Tomorrow. Those cards will allow you to defend better against your opponent's weakened attacks already, such as Ever Send Shadow Dreamblade gives you 20k shield and allows you to use another Blitz order, as well as Believe in Blooming Buds of Tomorrow gives you a 15k shield right off the bat, or a 30k shield if your opponent played a Vanguard through an ability, so it's pretty good against Strides as well as Youthberg. Lastly, I do recommend picking up a playset or so of Indipulse. You may not need a complete playset, but maybe just 1 or 2 copies of it. Seeing as getting 4 attacks on a turn is pretty easily accomplished in this deck with the booster or the grade 2 triple rare, which allows you to put Indipulse at the end of the turn to your soul to draw an additional card. So that's pretty good. Next up, here are some cards I actually do not recommend. Just because I don't recommend them doesn't mean you can't put them in your deck. After all, there's always surprises that you can put into your deck that can catch your opponent off guard, or honestly I could always just be wrong and it turns out these cards are amazing in the deck, and I'm only human, so to speak, so I am prone to error as well. So first up, we do have the Sylvanhorn Beast, Glenosa. I know this card came up as a pretty hyped up card when Levy Dress was first announced. However, after looking at the whole deck as a whole, this deck does require you quite a lot of counterblasts in order for you to secure a win. So his ability to give a rearguard his power for a counterblast is pretty heavy, making it like a 3 counterblast turn rather than just a 2, which is already pretty hefty cost in my opinion. So that's why I don't really recommend it. If you do put one in your deck, I do just maybe to put 1 or 2 copies in your deck, just as a tech, so that you can call it back with your order card, just to give it like a little beefy boost. Next up is Coulter. This card can help you search out for an order and thin out your deck for a little bit. However, overall I don't recommend it due to its lack of any real utility outside of searching out for your main order card, which hopefully you don't run into that many times in general. This is another one of those cards where if you want to put it in, maybe just 1 or 2 copies is perfectly fine. My next pick on this list is actually Alvina. It's pretty good because for Energy Blast 3, it does help you recover your order cards, both Blitz and normal order cards. So you could both, go on the offensive or defensive if you need to. However, Energy Blast 3 is a pretty hefty cost considering your grade 2 cards does require 3 Energy Blasts as well to use, as well as your normal order card, which is probably your main normal order that you want to use, also requires 2 energies to use. So how often you have 3 spare energies is not too often, which is why this card is on this list. This last card on my not to recommend cards on my list is actually a card I originally put on the recommended cards. However, after looking at searching for Infinite Knowledge and realizing it's not much of a deal breaker for the deck itself, I moved this card to the not to recommended cards, and that is Biz Ayavatvas, Oxboy. I thought it was pretty good originally because for a Counter Blast and Soul Blast, you can add a normal order card back from your drop to your hand, and it being an act card means you can an activate ability makes it so that you can continuously use it each turn. For the Soul Blast, it's pretty good, so you can Soul Blast out your Impulse Dragon and then call it back out with your searching for Infinite Knowledge. So it does have some potential to use, but I don't really recommend too much due to the fact that it is a Counter Blast 1 and a Soul Blast 1, so it's a little bit expensive in my opinion. Overall, I do think this deck is pretty balanced in terms of both offense and defense, letting you gain power during your turn to put more pressure on the opponent, while weakening the opponent during their turn so that you can probably outlast them in the long run. Sadly, it hasn't made too big of a dent in the current Japanese meta. However, I do believe that in the future when more support comes out for it, it does have potential to be much more powerful. Some things I have on my wish list is maybe cards that gain more defensive capabilities while they are on a Infinite Ice marker, like if it intercepts against another 10 or 15k shield, or even cards that are like if it's in the front row and the rear guard attacks, you can also lower that rear guard by an additional 5,000 power if it's on a Infinity Ice marker or something like that. Overall though, I do think it's a pretty solid deck. I do recommend it to players who are looking for a fresh new change in decks with a deck with a pretty unique playstyle, and I hope you guys will give it a chance when it comes out in English. Thank you guys for watching my video and listening to me ramble and yap for a little while. If you like this form of content, please comment below whether you like it or not like it. Again, I'm always learning and changing how I do things, and I do appreciate the feedback. But yeah, if you like what you see here today, feel free to subscribe and like for more content, and hope to catch you guys in the next video. Later.